I've built entire neighborhoods out of blueprints and grit, but nothing could have prepared me for the way my chest caved in the moment my sister looked me in the eye and said, "What's a parasite like you doing here? Get out right now or I'm calling the police." Her words didn't just sting, they rearranged the room. The fire's glow, the glass ornaments, the slow hush of snow against my window panes, all of it bent around that word, parasite. My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 38, a real estate developer who learned to read the ground long before I could read a balance sheet. I own this mountain lodge. It's my sanctuary, my chapel of timber and silence. And this night, Christmas Eve, was supposed to be the first night in months where I let myself disappear under a blanket with hot cocoa and a movie I'd seen 100 times. No phone, no deals, no emergencies. Just the crackle of fire and the clean breath of winter. The private road up to the lodge was a white ribbon laid through black firs. My tires made that soft, slow sound over snow, the sound that always told me I was close. I could already taste the quiet. Then my headlights caught the edge of a familiar shape, a white luxury SUV, gleaming and smug under a pelt of fresh snow. Charlotte's, the car I still paid for. Next to it, a slumped sedan half buried in powder, as if someone had parked it here days ago and the mountain had given up trying to swallow it. A small, sensible part of me tried to be reasonable. Maybe it's a misunderstanding, maybe an emergency. But when I reached the door, my heavy oak door with the iron strap hinges, and pressed my palm to it, the weight that should have met me didn't. It swung inward on a draft of hot, loud air. Music thumped. Laughter, the kind that gets sloppy on the edges, spilled over the rugs. Heat hit me first, then the smell. Wine, roasted meat, wet wool, perfume. The smell of a place that had been lived in. Not for an hour, but for days. No one noticed me at first. They were arranged around my living room like furniture that had learned to drink. Liam, sprawled with a lazy grin, his brothers arguing about a football game, his mother frowning at a stain on the rug that wasn't there yesterday. 7 bodies had melted into my lodge as if it were theirs. The coffee table, my wide cedar slab I'd sanded by hand the weekend the plumber canceled, was a battlefield of turkey bones, cranberry streaks, and glittering empties. Coats lay limply over the back of my leather sofa like molted skins. The fire snapped in the hearth, doing its best to make it look picturesque. Then I looked up at the mantel, where my parents' photos should have been. My mother with that soft laugh caught in her eyes, my father's hand touching her elbow. There was a glossy, oversized portrait of Liam's family. Matching sweaters, teeth, the kind of photo that isn't taken, it's choreographed. My parents had been pushed so far aside, their frame clung to the edge of the stone as if afraid to fall. Something cold moved through me. It wasn't the wind from the door. It was older than that. Liam saw me first. He lifted one finger like a judge calling for order, and the music cut. Heads turned as if a cue light had gone off. His mother blinked, polite confusion gathering like steam. "Oh, you must be Natalie. You've returned earlier than Liam said. How was your trip?" I said, "Trip?" Charlotte came out of the kitchen then, a glass in her hand. My glass, the one I gave her last Christmas. Burgundy stained the inside like paint. Her cheeks carried that feverish glow alcohol gives when it confuses itself for courage. Her gaze slid over the room, found me, and sharpened. "What's a parasite like you doing here? Get out right now or I'm calling the police." Every face in the room winced, not at the word parasite, but at the volume, at the audacity of saying it to the person who owned the floor under their shoes. Liam's mother whispered, "Charlotte," like a scolded prayer. "She's your sister, the one who lent us the lodge." I don't recall lending it to anyone, and I didn't go on any trip. This is my house." Liam's father's head swiveled towards his son. "What is she talking about?" No one answered him. I took a step inside, closed the door gently behind me, and the room had to make space. The sounds changed, the muffled rumble of the generator, the light hurry of snow against glass, the nerves in the silence. "Call them," I said to Charlotte, because she was already clutching her phone the way a child grips a talisman. "Call the police." For a second, she deflated. Just a second. Then her chin rose. "Fine. I'll tell them you barged in to ruin our Christmas." She stabbed at her screen with red-tipped nails. The room tried to become invisible around her. Liam pretended to rearrange the throw pillows as if the house belonged to him and I was the maid who had arrived on the wrong day. One of his brothers lowered his eyes like a child caught stealing. His mother pressed her lips together so tightly they nearly disappeared. I set my briefcase on the edge of the dining table, right next to a puddle of champagne. The latch clicked open with a sound I have always loved. Clean, mechanical, inevitable. I laid out the deed, the property tax receipt, my ID. The paper brightened under the firelight like truth held to a flame.
"You're not going to need those," Charlotte said, but her voice was thinner now. She tossed back the last of her wine. The glass caught the light and the ridges glittered. "Police don't care about paperwork." I smiled with just my mouth. "They care about trespassing." The minutes that followed stretched like rubber. No one sat, no one spoke. On the mantel, the glossy portrait of Liam's family smiled their permanent smile into the tension. I moved across the room and picked up my parents' frame, my thumb grazing the glass. My mother's mouth was open, mid-laugh, the way it used to get when she was trying to pretend a difficult moment was a funny one. I set my parents back where they belonged, in the center. I slid the other frame aside with 2 fingers. The scrape of the frame's felt backing against stone sounded louder than it should have. Liam took a breath, like he was about to say something reasonable. Then he didn't. He just looked at Charlotte. She looked back with the kind of stare that begs another person to be braver than they are. Outside, the night rearranged itself. Through the window, the snow kept falling, straight, obedient lines in the windless cold. A stag trail cut the far trees, soft and private. "Charlotte," I said quietly, "why my key code?" Her laugh came out sharp. "Because family uses what family has. Or did you forget that when you were out traveling?" She rolled the word like it tasted expensive. "I didn't give you that code for parties. I gave it to you for emergencies." "This is an emergency. It's Christmas." The room shifted then, a collective flinch at the same time. I caught Liam's mother's eyes. Something in them was pleading. Don't make a scene. Not on the holiday. Not in front of the men. That old, familiar plea women learn to ask other women. I almost answered it. I almost said, "You're right. Let's lower our voices. Let's fold the edges of this ugliness into the napkins and wash it out in the sink." But then my gaze snagged the stain on the arm of my leather chair, a ring of Merlot. The throw blanket I keep for winter nights was balled up at someone's feet, wet with snow. My book, that fragile stack of pages I'd been saving for tonight, lay face down on the rug, spine cracking open like a mouth asking why. The word came back like a hot iron pressed to skin. Parasite. "No," I said. It came out so gently I surprised myself. "No, not tonight." They tried to move then in little ways. Liam's father patted his pockets for the keys he and I both knew were in his coat. One of the brothers started stacking plates, as if tidying might prove ownership. Charlotte placed her glass on the mantel beside my parents' photo, and the smear of wine on the rim looked like a bloody grin. I felt the weight of my mother's last request. Charlotte is still naive and dreamy. Please support her so she doesn't go astray. Those words had lived in my ribs for years, pressing against my breath. They'd turned into money orders and co-signed loans, and gentle nods when I should have said no. They'd turned into the SUV outside, the rent I subsidized, the forgiveness I kept on tap. And on this night, they turned into a new kind of promise, to protect the part of me my mother had loved. Somewhere down the mountain, a distant hum rose. First a rumor, then a certainty, growing faster than the snow could swallow it. Red and blue light brushed the far trees, faint and pulsing like a heartbeat coming home to the body. Charlotte heard it too. She lifted her chin and gave me a smile I recognized from our childhood, the one she used right before she broke a rule and dared me to tattle. "Perfect," she said brightly, as if she'd planned a surprise. "We'll let them decide." "We will," I said. Outside, the first bloom of siren light found the window and spilled across my floorboards like carnival color. It washed over the champagne puddle, the bones, the glitter, the portrait face that didn't belong here. It found my hands and my papers, and the small, steady place inside me that had finally stopped apologizing. The knock that came a minute later shook the door in its frame. 3 professional, even raps that made everyone in the room straighten up as if summoned to judgment. I looked at Charlotte. She looked at me. For the first time all night, I saw it. The quiver at the edge of her lip. The quick swallow against a throat gone dry. For the first time, she seemed to understand that not all doors open for you just because you want them to. I crossed the room, my boots quiet on the rug, and reached for the handle. "Let's clear this up," I said, and pulled the door into the cold.
The cold rushed in first. Then came the flash of red and blue painting the snow outside like a broken kaleidoscope. 2 officers stood at the door, their breath visible in the frozen air. They didn't even have to step inside to smell the mix of alcohol and arrogance that clung to the room. "Evening, ma'am," one of them said, his tone polite but cautious. "We got a report about a disturbance here. Mind telling us what's going on?" Before I could open my mouth, Charlotte stumbled forward, her voice pitched with false innocence. "It's her. She barged in and ruined our Christmas. She's been stalking us for months." "I'm her sister," I interrupted calmly, "and this," I gestured around the lodge, "is my house." The officers exchanged looks. The younger one lifted his notebook. The older one exhaled through his nose and surveyed the scene. The mess, the half-eaten food, the trembling guests. "All right," he said slowly. "Let's start with identification." Charlotte laughed, that brittle, shrill laugh that always meant she was afraid. "Oh, she's lying. You don't know her. She's insane. Those papers she carries are fake." I didn't argue. I didn't have to. I unlatched my briefcase, took out the property deed, my ID, and the tax receipts. The paper crinkled softly in the officer's gloved hands. He scanned them under the beam of his flashlight, his brow tightening. He turned toward Charlotte. "Ma'am, these are legitimate documents. The property belongs to Miss Natalie Brooks. That means you and your family are here without permission. You're trespassing." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the fire seemed to pause its crackle. Liam's mother gasped. "Trespassing?" Her voice broke on the word. "But Liam said, he told us Natalie lent him the place for the holidays." Her husband shot his son a hard look. "You lied to us?" Liam opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His face was the color of old snow, pale, thin, melting fast. Charlotte's jaw trembled. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "We're family. We have every right to be here. She's just trying to humiliate us." One of the officers sighed. "Family or not, ma'am, you entered without the owner's consent. That's unlawful entry." He turned to me.
Miss Brooks, what would you like us to do? Would you like them removed from the property? The words hung there thick as smoke. Charlotte looked at me then, not the way a sister looks at a sister, but the way a thief looks at the person holding the key to the vault. Natalie, please, it's Christmas. You wouldn't. But I didn't answer. Instead, I looked past her, at the photo of our parents above the fireplace. My mother's gentle smile seemed to flicker in the light, as if asking me that same impossible thing she'd once begged on her deathbed. Take care of her, Natalie. She's still naive. Don't let her go astray. For years, I obeyed that voice. I paid her rent. I covered her debts. I said yes until the word meant nothing. But now, standing in the wreckage of my own home, I felt that old promise shift. Maybe taking care didn't mean saving her. Maybe it meant finally letting her fall. Yes, I said quietly. I want them all to leave my house immediately. Charlotte froze. The wine glass she'd been clutching slipped from her hand and shattered at her feet. Liam's father muttered something under his breath, half an apology, half in disbelief. Then you'd better start packing, the officer said. His voice wasn't cruel, just final. The living room came alive with movement, muttered curses, the rustle of coats, the hollow clink of glass as they gathered their things. Charlotte stood motionless, her eyes burning holes through me. I ignored her. I reached for my phone, unlocked it with my fingerprint, and the faint blue light of the banking app illuminated my face. The moment that sound, that familiar digital chime filled the room, every head turned toward me. First, I said evenly, Charlotte, the apartment you're living in belongs to me. You've been paying only maintenance fees, not rent. That ends tonight. Her face crumpled. You wouldn't. The next chime cut her off. Second, I said, turning my gaze towards Liam's parents, the house you live in, I found it, negotiated it, guaranteed it. I believed giving you stability would help your son become responsible. I was wrong. That support ends too. Liam's mother covered her face with trembling hands. Her husband stared at the floor. And finally, I said, my tone colder now, the car outside, the SUV you used to drive here, I financed it because Charlotte said it was for your hospital trips. Tomorrow morning, the finance company will repossess it.
The third chime echoed like a gunshot. Charlotte's mouth opened, but no sound came. Liam tried to speak, but couldn't find his voice. The only thing left in the room was the sound of the officers' radios crackling softly, waiting for the next call. Then, I said the last words that would ever pass between us as sisters. The moment you called me a parasite, I made my decision. I've given you over $50,000 over the years, and tonight, it stops. All of it. Her face collapsed in on itself. Disbelief, rage, desperation, all fighting for space. Liam's parents shuffled towards the door, muttering apologies. The officers motioned for Charlotte and Liam to follow. Come on, one of them said. The snow is getting worse. Let's end this here. Charlotte lunged toward me, eyes wild. Natalie, please, it's Christmas. You can't throw us out into a blizzard. The officer caught her arm, gently but firmly. Ma'am, that's enough. Let's not make this harder. I didn't answer her. I couldn't. My voice was gone, replaced by the dull roar of the wind outside and the sound of my own heart slowing down. One by one, they gathered their coats, their bags, their pride, and left. At the door, she turned once more, her eyes glistening with equal parts hatred and fear. For a second, I thought she might say something that would undo it all. Something small, human, like, I'm sorry. But she didn't. She just stared. Then the door closed behind her, heavy and final, sealing in the warmth and shutting out the chaos. The officers nodded to me, professional but kind. "Sorry for the trouble, ma'am. If anything else happens, give us a call." When the last sound of tires crunching snow faded down the mountain road, I was alone. Completely, peacefully, terrifyingly alone.
She had learned early how to weaponize tears, how to make helplessness look like grace. And I, calm, pragmatic, successful, was her perfect counterpart, the sister who never said no. When I think about it now, it almost feels like she rehearsed that moment by the fireplace for years. The way she stood there, the way the wine glass caught the light, the perfect cruelty of her words. Parasite. That wasn't an accident. That was the truth she'd been holding in her mouth for years, waiting for the moment she could spit it out. I took another sip and let the silence stretch. The flames popped softly, releasing tiny sparks that vanished before reaching the rug. Each one felt like a fragment of the life I'd finally set fire to. Outside, snow began to fall again. The flakes were heavy and slow, drifting down like tiny feathers. The mountains absorbed every sound until the world felt muffled, distant, almost holy. For the first time in years, I didn't feel responsible for anyone. Not for her bills, not for Liam's failures, not for our mother's ghost whispering, "Be kind, Natalie." Kindness had cost me my peace. Tonight, I'd bought it back. I added another log to the fire, and as the flames roared back to life, a strange calm filled the room. I could almost feel the house breathing with me again, as if it had been waiting, patient, loyal, for me to come home to myself. I thought about them then, Charlotte, Liam, and his family, probably huddled in their car or sulking at some motel, trying to make sense of the world collapsing around them. I wondered if she would realize, even for a moment, what she'd thrown away. But I knew her too well. She wouldn't, not yet. She'd be angry first, then scared, then angry again. And eventually, when there was nothing left to blame, she might finally look at the mirror and see the real Parasite. As for me, I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. Tired in the bones, the way you get after surviving something that didn't try to kill you, but nearly did. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the warmth wrap around me. The sound of the storm outside was almost comforting now. The mountain didn't judge. It just held everything. Snow, silence, mistakes, and buried them in white. Tomorrow, I told myself, I'll clean the house. I'll throw away the empty bottles, wash the dishes, hang my parents' photo back in its rightful place. I'll rebuild this space, one quiet hour at a time. But tonight, I would just sit here and breathe. For once in my life, I didn't owe anyone anything. And that, I realized, was the most priceless gift I'd ever given myself. By the time the sun climbed over the ridge the next morning, it was as if the night before had been a dream. The snow outside was untouched, white and perfect. The world scrubbed clean. Inside, my living room still bore the scars of the chaos, spilled wine, crumbs of broken glass, a few deep scratches on the floorboards, but the air itself felt lighter. I brewed coffee and stood by the window, watching my breath fog against the glass. The valley below was wrapped in fog, silent and endless. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about bills or loans or who needed help next. I was thinking about nothing at all. And it was bliss. I stayed in the lodge for another week. I read novels I hadn't touched in years, cooked for myself, built fires, and fell asleep to the sound of wind through pine trees. I didn't check my email. I didn't answer calls. The world outside could wait.
But peace, I've learned, is like snow. It never left untouched for long. When I finally returned to the city, reality was waiting for me in the shape of a blinking voicemail light on my office phone. "Miss Brooks," said a polite voice from the property management company, "we haven't received rent from Charlotte Hayes and her husband. It's 5 days overdue. We've tried calling, but there's been no response. Should we issue the formal notice?" I paused, my hand resting lightly on the receiver. 5 days. Charlotte had never missed a payment before, not that she'd paid the full rent anyway. I'd always covered the difference, quietly, through automatic transfers she probably assumed came from nowhere. I took a slow breath and said, "Yes. Follow the lease procedure, no extensions, no exceptions." The man hesitated. "Are you sure it's your sister?" "Yes," I said again. "I'm sure." When I hung up, I realized my fingers were trembling, not from guilt, but from the strange freedom of saying those words out loud. No exceptions. A few days later, another email arrived. This one from the auto finance company. Subject: vehicle repossession completed. Attached was a photograph of the white SUV being lifted onto a tow truck under a gray winter sky. I stared at it for a few seconds. Then I dragged it straight to the trash folder and got back to work. That night, when I got home, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. For a moment, I almost didn't answer. Then something deep inside, a mix of curiosity and habit, made me swipe the screen. "Hello?"
There was a pause, then a small, broken voice. "Natalie, it's me, Charlotte." For a heartbeat, all the old emotions rushed back. The years of love, frustration, pity, and guilt. But beneath them, something else had taken root. Calm. "What do you want?" I asked. Her breath hitched. "You can't be serious. After everything you've done, you kicked us out, took the car, the apartment. How could you do that to family?" I said nothing. "We're staying with Liam's parents," she went on, voice shaking. "It's horrible. His mother insults me every day. Liam blames me for everything. You can't just leave me like this." "You brought this on yourself," I said evenly. "You lied, you trespassed, and you insulted me in my own home. You're facing the consequences of your own choices." There was silence on the line, and then her voice broke. "You don't understand. Liam, he's useless. He doesn't work hard, he wastes money, In the background, I heard a man's voice cut through hers like a blade. "What did you say?" It was Liam. "Wait," Charlotte gasped. "No, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," Liam shouted. "You burn through every dollar I make like it's nothing." Their fight exploded through the speaker, screaming, cursing, the sound of something crashing to the floor. For a few seconds, I just sat there, listening to it all, the chaos I'd once paid to keep quiet. Then the line went dead. I stared at my phone for a long moment before setting it down gently. The second movement of their collapse had begun. Weeks passed. Winter began to fade into early spring, and the world thawed back into color. I returned to the mountain lodge one weekend, alone, as always, and found it just as I'd left it. Clean, quiet, mine. I made tea and opened the windows. The air smelled like pine and melting snow. It was the scent of starting over. That's when my phone rang again, another unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Natalie?" The voice was thin, cracked, barely recognizable. It was Charlotte. "I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. Please just give me one more chance. We're sisters. We only have each other." Her voice was trembling the way it used to when she wanted something, but I'd learned to hear the difference between guilt and regret. I walked to the window. Outside, sunlight spilled over the mountains like gold dust. "Charlotte," I said quietly, "I'll give you one last piece of advice." She sniffled. "What?" "The next time you find yourself in trouble, don't call me." A pause. Then softly, "Natalie, please." "Call the police officers, the same ones you called that night. Maybe this time they'll take your side." And before she could say another word, I ended the call. Then, without hesitation, I blocked her number. The world outside was so still it felt sacred. I stood there, holding my phone, feeling a quiet that wasn't emptiness, but relief. There are no more parasites in my life. Not in my house, not in my bank accounts, not in my heart. Just peace, vast and silent, like the mountains themselves. That night, as the sun went down behind the white peaks, I poured myself a glass of wine. Not the cheap kind Charlotte favored, but the last bottle from my cellar. I raised it to the window, watching the light catch in the glass. "To freedom," I said softly. And for the first time in years, I drank to myself. End of story.